too for folks to show their face, and then we can recognize them and get cranking here. Hello, Leanne. Hello, Brent.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The stream is going live.
Good morning, Randy.
And you do have 10 board members so far.
Got 10? Okay, let's just give it a minute or two here and let folks join us. I think we might be there or just missing one. Let's do roll call and see where we are here. Member Reel.
Here.
Member Booth.
Here.
Member Bogus.
Yes, sir.
Member Klein. Member Davis.
Here.
Member Earl.
Yes.
Vice Chair Earl. Member Green.
Here.
Vice Chair Hart.
Yes.
Member Carey. I think I see Member Carey. We'll come back. Member Wood.
Yes.
Member Hymas. Thought I saw Matt too. We'll come back. Member Lear.
Here.
Member Norton. Member Straight.
Here.
And Chair Moss is here. Let's go back. Member Klein. Member Carey. Member Hymas.
Here, I'm back.
Member Hymas is back. Let's see. Member Norton. I don't think we had Member Norton, did we?
No, sir.
Chair
All right.
Moss, can you ask anybody that has if they're able to turn their videos on, please, just as a courtesy to the public? So.
Sure thing. Let's see your happy, shiny faces, folks. All right. We do have some members of the public with us and some folks here for public comment. So let's see, what was the count there? I think we are missing Member Klein, Member Carey, and Member Norton.
And Member Carey and Member Norton just joined us, so we're only missing Member Klein.
Okay, Member Norton, are you here?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And Member Sorry,
And member Carey joined us.
Member Carey, are you here? Just need for the record.
Yeah, Chair Moss, I couldn't hear you over my laptop, so I just switched to the cell phone.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, we do have a quorum. We have all present except for Member Klein, so I'll call the meeting to order. As authorized by Utah Code 52-4, the meeting is being held electronically. The public may also attend electronically. Appreciate board members and interested parties and members of the public coming together for a special meeting. We've had some things that are moving quickly here. It's an issue that has been percolating, but brought to the fore by a timeline and an opportunity to secure funding from the University of Florida through Safe Schools for Alex, which we'll talk about, to fund the requirement in Utah code that we have an interactive dashboard reporting safety data items. And we'll go into that, but the reason for the timing is the Department of Justice grant timeline. And as we can walk through in detail, let me just set kind of the basic parameters here, and then we're going to open for public comment. The applicant for this safety grant is the University of Florida, and the subrecipient would be Safe Schools for Alex, as I understand it, which we met during the last session as they came to Utah and talked about what's been done in Florida towards school safety and played a part in discussing HB 84, sponsored by Representative Wilcox, which added new requirements and new safety precautions to Utah code. So part of the code as it now exists and partly precedes HB 80 was a requirement for an interactive dashboard that would allow the public to see data on safety incidents and have the opportunity or the ability to compare within the state and potentially outside the state. That's background, but I want to open for, sorry, was there a comment there? I want to go to public comment. We do have public comment. Before we go in detail, I wanted to just frame that up and explain the reason University of Florida is looking at the opportunity to get the grant. They could use it for any state. They have chosen to invite Utah to partner through Safe Schools for Alex and be a beneficiary of that grant money. It's $2 million. So Utah is not actually applying for the grant. It's not the grant applicant, nor is it technically a subrecipient. As I understand it, I think the best word is beneficiary, that U of F would get the grant. They would work with Safe Schools for Alex, who can give it out to any state, but the opportunity for Utah to sign on in support of their involvement in the grant, in which case the money would then go to Utah to help us fulfill the requirements of statute regarding the interactive dashboard. So that's to frame up. We are not applying for a grant. We are considering whether to support U of F, Safe Schools for Florida, in applying for that grant with Utah as the intended beneficiary. So that's a little more detailed than normal, but I wanted to give you the reason for calling the session, and let's go to public comment. Sybil, do you want to coordinate that? I don't know if we have a list here, but I know we made it available.
We do have two gentlemen on the line, and I can time that if there's a time, if you want to have 3-minute discussion.
Yeah, I think we probably have, well, what maybe let's shoot for 2 and see if we need to extend. We only have, I think we noticed this for an hour and we've got 1 item. So if 2 minutes does it, let's give that a shot. If not, we can extend.
And I do have Max. Max, I'll let you pronounce your last name. He is the founder and CEO of Safe Schools. And then we do have Jason Stevens, the COO of Safe Schools. Would you like to open with Max?
Yeah, thank you, Max. Thank you both for joining us.
Chair Moss, thank you for inviting me to chat with you. My name is Max Schachter. It's nice to meet everyone. I know I see a lot of friendly faces, and I appreciate you holding this meeting in such short notice. If I can just back up a little bit and just explain how we got here. After my son Alex was murdered in the Parkland school shooting, Florida took school safety very, very seriously. there was a lot of missed signs and a lot of red flags about the Parkland murderer prior to the tragedy. Florida formed a commission to investigate the shooting. The governor did in Florida, and I sit on that commission. And one of the areas that we started to investigate was every school in Florida is required to report incidents of violence and drugs to the State Department of Education. And so we started to focus a lot on the data. We've done a lot more than just that, but that's just one small piece of what Florida's done. So we then in October of last year, they opened up the site of the Parkland school shooting for guided visitations. And in October of last year, I opened it up to the whole country to come and bear witness to this horrible tragedy where 17 were murdered, including my little boy, Alex, and 17 were injured in just 3 minutes and 51 seconds. We had 225 people walk through that building, and the state that brought the largest contingent through that building was Utah, including Representatives Wilcox and General Burton and several of the USBE staff. And so I was really impressed. I didn't have a relationship with Utah prior to that, but the focus on this issue when they came through that building was really second to none. And I know they were extremely impacted, and I appreciate them all coming all this way to walk through the horrible crime scene. And then what happened was Representative Wilcox and General Burton, they took a lot of the failures from the school district and from the law enforcement side, and then they took a lot of those lessons learned and they put it into the new schools, the Utah School Safety Bill, the one that we're talking about here. So I really appreciate them doing that. And that's been my mission since Parkland is I put my former life on hold, and now I travel the country talking about our horrible tragedy here, because if we can just implement the lessons learned from Parkland, I know that we can save lives and make schools safer across the country. Thank God you haven't had a terrible tragedy in Utah. Unfortunately, the next school mass murderer is already out there, and the next gun that he's going to use is already out there. So there's no one panacea. It's really a holistic approach, and you're never done. You know, we issued one school safety bill after Parkland, and we didn't stop. We've issued 7 school safety bills post Parkland, and we're continuing to innovate and improve on what we originally did. We're constantly analyzing. We're not just putting forth school safety bills, we're putting accountability into it as well to make sure that schools and school districts are complying with law. So I'm here to answer any questions you have. I appreciate you prioritizing school safety. It's very, very important. The most important thing is that if the students and the staff don't make it home to their families every day, nothing else matters. And I'm here to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Max. Jason, and why don't we just conclude public comment and then know that our guests are available if we do have questions. We might put that through our staff, but we appreciate both of you being here. Jason?
Yeah, I think Max said it much better than I could, and I'd rather give him the time to field any questions from you guys. So I'll give my time to Max.
Okay. Let's go ahead and put the motion out there so we can discuss, which could include questions to our staff. I think they've been working deeply on this, as you heard from Max. Appreciate their dedication to this subject. Appreciate the opportunity we had to work through it in the last session. So I'll frame the motion and give a little bit of context there. The motion is that the Utah State Board of Education directs staff to issue a letter supporting the University of Florida and Safe Schools for Alex in applying for this grant for the benefit of Utah, and if approved by the Department of Justice, use the funding to establish the required dashboard in compliance with House Bill 84, 2024 general session. Just to speak briefly, because I don't want to hog the time here, there has been a lot of discussion over the last couple of weeks.
I'm sorry, you need a second probably before
I
you can.
apologize. Thank you. This is not a committee motion. I'm used to finance. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by member Straight. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. The discussion has been clarifying the opportunity that's available. What would be the commitment by Utah? What would be Utah's ability to control the dashboard? So the Department of Justice puts out the grant. You've heard from Max about their efforts, and they're working with the University of Florida. I had a couple of questions. One of those is, what's the data that would go there? Number two, what is USBE's ability to control the dashboard? It's an opportunity to have something funded that otherwise we would have to come up with the funding for. But for me, the question always is, okay, if we're going to be the beneficiary, are we also in a position to control it so that it complies with Utah statute and meets local needs? And I think one of the things I've heard is that the LEAs are worried about some of the implementation costs in time and effort to get the dashboard data together to fulfill the other requirements of the bill. And so part of the question was, can this be used for that? Our staff can answer that, but I think number one, we have part of this, you'll see in the backup, 25,000 a year would go to USBE, which we could use both to do internal kind of support functions and direction functions. We could give input as the University of Florida Safe Schools for Alex builds the dashboard. So that would give our staff payment to do that part of it in relation with U of F, but also to help LEAs to do their part. And there's been some concern by LEAs on how do we comply with this. So money to our staff would help us work with them. Second part, and you'll see this in the backup as well, there's the potential letter that we are looking for approval for that would say that USB has oversight on what is included in the dashboard and reserves the right to update and modify as needed to meet local needs. It also says that any data sharing would need to be permissible under FERPA. So it puts us in charge of what data is there. It's my understanding in working with Deputy Jones that the data that would be included on the interactive dashboard is already being posted to our website, but it's not an interactive, publicly available form. So my questions were, is this new data? The answer was no. Number two, can we use this money to help the LEAs? The answer was, you can use some of it, and there would be some benefit. It would not be flow-through money to the LEAs. Number three, would we retain control over the dashboard, the ability to modify if policy changes or our local needs changed? And the answer to that was yes. So those are the questions I asked that satisfied me. Obviously, it's an opportunity. I wanted to ask about the downsides, and I really appreciate our staff working through, the last week to answer those questions. So with that, let's open it up, and I assume there will be questions. I might just defer first, if I could, to our staff. If somebody wants to walk this through a little bit on the technical elements of the application process and the documents that are in backup, then we can open it up to questions. But Chantel, Patty, who wants to take a lead on kind of walking through those documents?
Hi, thank you, everyone. Chantal Cota, Director of School Safety and Student Support. Sorry, it's a new title. Thank you so much for joining us today. Yes, I'm happy to walk you through some of these documents. So what you have access to.
Point of order, Chair Moss. I'm so sorry.
Yes, Member Bogus.
I don't know who is speaking because they're not popping on my screen. I don't know. I know you announced them, but I can't see them.
Yeah, let's see. Do we have your video, Chantel? I can see her. We all see her. Can you see her now, Member Bogus?
Yeah, can we pin her? Is that a possibility since there's so many people in here?
Well, that's a new one for me. Does somebody know how to pin Chantel?
I do appreciate that. And now that I see her, I know exactly who she is. So thank you for that.
All right. If somebody else is invisible, let us know. And if somebody knows how to pin them, we'll pin away. Thank you, Chantel. Back to you.
Sure.
Chantel, you accidentally muted yourself.
Now we've got the audio. There we go. All right.
All right, we'll get this right. Thank you. So I'm happy to share any of these documents here today. Sorry, just bear with us one moment. We've got several in one room and we're just working out some technical difficulties. Okay. Okay, I think we've got it. Perfect. Thank you so much. So yes, I'm very happy to walk us through any documents. We've also got others that can answer some technical questions as well. So let's start with perhaps the draft letter of support. This is the draft letter of support, which, as you can see, is watermarked as draft for your input as well. This is a letter of support that is needed to move this grant forward. So essentially what this letter is stating is that the Utah State Board of Education is wanting to move forward in this process with the University of Florida and Safe School for Alex as the beneficiary to the grant in the way that Chair Moss had described. So ultimately, this is giving them the go ahead to put this in with the application that they will submit. The final application will also include a budget and a narrative that will speak to several of the items in this letter, as well as any of the other specifications that you might need. But I think the big message to consider here is that some of the questions that came through are, will USBE have the opportunity to be a partner every step of the way? And the answer to that is yes, that we will have, meaning you as board members will have oversight in how the dashboard looks, as well as any of the data. And the data, to just be really clear, that we're looking at is the data that we're already reporting publicly in our school discipline and law enforcement action report. So that data is data that we have been required to share publicly for some time now. And it's just now that in House Bill 84, it's given us the opportunity to put it onto a dashboard format. And that's what this letter is stating, is that data will go then into a dashboard that will be created through Safe Schools for Alex using this grant money specific to the needs of Utah, but that USBE will be partners along the way. So that letter of support just really is one document that will go in the application for the grant, stating that USBE is indeed a partner and will be moving forward with this 3-year grant process. The other document that you have access to is a DOJ FAQ document. And these are questions that have come through. We thought it would be helpful to put together just a bit of a Q&A for you to preview prior to this meeting. And of course, we can discuss today as well. That just talks about the parameters of the grant, what the data could look like, what the process for the grant looks like, and how things will roll out throughout the entire process. And then the third document that you have access to is another letter of support. This letter was created by Representative Wilcox, Chief of State Pennington, as well as Commissioner Jess Anderson, to show their support that we move forward with this process. Their interest in this is that the dashboard will satisfy the requirements of House Bill 84, as well as some of the other public data portals that we need to work with other agencies to fulfill requirements for as well.
Thank you very much, Chantel. And I won't try to get your new title correct, but thank you for walking us through. Let's open it up then. Time for questions, comments, discussion to the motion from board members. If we could bring back the screen with everybody. And let's go by the usual hand signs. You're electronic, and if that's not working, feel free to throw a hand up. And Sybil, could you help me? I see member Straight up first. So if I'm not off on that, let's go to member Straight and then move from there. Go ahead, Brent.
Thank you, Chair. I'll let you decide where this question goes. So my understanding is that Utah House Bill 84 establishes the need for a dashboard. Was there money appropriated for that dashboard outside of the university or what we're looking at now, or how was that going to come about? And I'll pause there.
Thank you, member Straight. Let's defer to either Chantel or Deputy Norman or Jones on the funding side. Who would like to address that? My understanding is there's not funding for the interactive element of the dashboard, but who'd like to take that one? I see Scott perhaps, but no sound.
Yeah, I got you. Can you hear me now, sir?
Yeah. Yep, we
All
got
right.
you.
Deputy Superintendent of Operations Scott Jones, the answer to, through you, Chair, the answer to the board member Straight's question is no. There was no funding provided to meet this requirement of HB 84. Does that answer board member Straight's question, sir?
Member Straight?
Yes, thank you. Could I follow up?
Yes, back to you.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, after the tragedy in Florida, there was a look at what were the causes, what could we have done to prevent this? And now, and we went and visited from Utah, and this has now opened up this opportunity for a grant in Department of Justice, I believe, if I remember correctly. And that will be used to create our dashboard, which will benefit us as we move forward in our safety plans. Is that correct, or do I need some clarification?
That's correct to my understanding. Anyone from our team on staff wish to clarify? I see Scott nodding the head. Okay, but that is, I believe that's correct.
Thank you.
And Member Vice Chair Earl?
Yeah, I just have a question on the data. I know it's data that we've already collected, it sounds like. And my understanding is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that we have a decision on what goes on the dashboard itself. And then the question I have is, are we sending data to Florida, or are they sending us the framework for us to put the data in? I'm just wondering if we're transferring data down there and then it's coming back to us, or how is that? I just want to know that we're owning our own data. We're not sending it to another entity, but we're using the framework for that data to, does that make sense? Like we're putting the data into the framework for usability, but we're not transferring all of our data to Florida.
Yeah, my understanding is we do have control, but on the logistics, could I kick that to the team? It looks like Chantel's stepping up for that, and feel free to bring in our guests if you need to on that, Chantel.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So, I'm sorry, we've just got a technical difficulty here. Here we go. Great. So any of the data that is used for the dashboard, we will hand over, and Aaron Broff should be on shortly to speak more to this in terms of the technical piece of it. But any data that we hand over will be scrubbed and curated and looked at here at USBE before it's even handed over. So we'll make sure to give the green light. Of course, we'll have Director Chalice and those of you on the board that wish to look at the data, make the decision on any data that is transferred over to be put on the dashboard or any other place.
And Chantel, to clarify, that would be deaggregated.
Did that answer your question, Vice Chair Earl?
I suppose so. Yeah. So we'll be sending data down to them, right? But you guys are going to oversee it before it leaves the state, right? Okay.
Chantel, just a clarification, piggyback there. Is this disaggregated data that would be sent? Chantel, can you hear me?
I apologize. Can you repeat that, Chair Moss?
Yeah, my question was, would this be disaggregated data that would be sent?
So
Not
yes,
student-
the data would be data per school. So part of the requirement for House Bill 84 is that it requires a comparison tool. So it would be per school. So the data would be disaggregated per school in a way that is, of course, protective of student data privacy and things of that nature. But the comparison tool does ask that we have data per school that is on the dashboard.
But it wouldn't have specific individualized personal information on students, correct? I see Max shaking his head. Just Chantel, can you make sure we're clear on that? This would not be student identifiable information that would be sent outside of our office.
Okay. We need to have that repeated. We're trying to figure out the volume and whatnot in here. So could that be repeated? And I think we have it now.
Yeah, sorry, just a piggyback question. I want to confirm, my understanding is any data sent outside of our office to the U of Florida for use on the dashboard would not contain personal student data. It would be disaggregated data, not personally identified
No PII.
data. Is that correct?
That is, Chair, that is correct. I have Aaron Bruff who's sitting across from me, and that is correct.
Okay, I don't want to hog the time. Let's go. We got the phone. Let's see, Sybil, I've got member Wood and then somebody with a phone
And then
number.
member Lear.
Okay, member Lear I know is about to drop, so let's go to her first. We'll come to you, member Wood. That's all right. Member Lear? You're muted if you're talking. We can't see you or hear you. Member Lear. All right, let's go to member Wood, and if member Lear is available, and if you have to drop, just jump in. Member Wood?
Can someone help me understand what this intends to do in the end? I recognize that it's required by law, but what do we hope to come out of this? I've been looking at the 2023 school disciplinary and law enforcement report. It looks like we've been collecting some data since 2018, but in the end, what's the end game to this that we're seeing? The why this is happening across the nation. We're seeing, I think I looked at the School Safes for Alex site. They've done New York, Pennsylvania. What's the outcome? Like, what do we see positively from collecting all this and sharing and distributing and evaluating and comparing? Does anyone have that?
Did I defer that to Chantel? And again, feel free to use our guests if you'd like, but who on staff would like to?
So
Oh, go ahead, Aaron.
someone's got to go mute. You got it? Okay. I think she can hear from here too. So Aaron Bruff, Director of Data Statistics, thanks for letting me be here. I'll answer first off, and I'll let Chantel answer this as well. So the intent of what we're trying to make available is really trying to think, it's transparency of what's going on within schools and making sure that the public have access of actually what's going, what's happening on the report. So it is just easier to consume, filter it down to a school level versus reading through an Excel spreadsheet. To share the example then from what we heard from Florida and from other states is parents are frustrated saying, we don't know what the incident rate or reporting functionality or anything like that is going on in the school. We'd like to have a public view, transparent view, if you will, into what's happening there. The intent is not to say be predictive in anything, because this is all after the fact data that as it comes into the state at the end of the year through the data collection. But it's just to say, okay, these are the rates, here are the incidences, and it's in a viewable format via this dashboard. So a parent can click on it and drill down and say, okay, this is my school in the community, or if around in the area I live at, I want to see what's going on with these rates to kind of give an idea of, again, just the behavior and the incident data within that community. Hopefully that helps. Chantel.
Just one follow-up. Have we found in other states that this has made them safer? Maybe someone from Safe Schools could help me understand that. Has this made them safer?
Max is Max online?
Yes.
Okay, Max.
Yes, thank you. So we are in the infancy of creating these dashboards. So it's very early in the process, but you can't manage which you don't measure. And so I totally am in agreement with what Aaron described as far as the transparency piece. Parents want to know, they deserve to know what's happening in their school, but we hope that what we find is that a lot of school districts do not have dashboards either. So they might know, and so the dashboard is for all education stakeholders, for school board members. They should be able, when they're analyzing what's happening in their district, they should be able to compare what's happening on their campus to other campuses, how their district compares to other districts, And it's also for you folks as well, for the State Board of Education, for legislators to know what's happening inside our schools so that you can distribute resources to help the schools the most. And then in the Florida dashboard, we created a whole resources page. So it's for school districts. So if school districts see that their bullying numbers are going up, they can look at bullying resources. And it's, everyone, it's to empower parents with this information. So because schools can't fix this all on their own, they can't reduce violence on their campus on their own. We need to involve the entire community, and that's what it's for.
Thank you. Thank you both. Let's turn,
Thank you.
let's see. Sybil, do you have the list? I've got member Vice Chair Earl, member Klein, and member Bogus. Is that
I think
the right
I think it's Klein, Bogus, and then me. They
There
were.
we go. All right, member Klein.
And then member Davis.
Gotcha.
All right. I have been listening the whole time, even though I got on late. But I have some questions regarding the collection of data after reading the book, Why Meadow Died, and understanding what happened with that young man and the buildup to the shooting incident there. There were many instances where there were discipline problems, and this only came out because of the investigative work of parents, not because of the data, because the data itself was not, it did not reflect accurately what had occurred leading up to it, because the schools know that they're being scrutinized on their data, and so they are perversely disincentivized from reporting it or tracking it, and incentivized to sweep things under the rug. And so there was a long trail of history with this student that was not showing in the data, because the schools, by looking at the data, the school looked squeaky clean. It looked like a top-rate school as far as academics and no behavior problems, when it was the exact opposite. It was more of a whited sepulcher, and they had massive problems. And so I see this as, while being well-intentioned, having the very much so having the opposite effect. In fact, we are already seeing things like that happening in our schools today. I talked to the husband of a teacher in Saratoga Springs just the other night, and he was saying how frustrated his wife is because the behavior is out of control. She had a student literally choke another student with a belt, had to send the student down to the office. The office sent the student back, and the teacher was grilled for why she didn't do a better job. And the student was not, there was no suspension or he was not, nothing happened to him. And yet we have other examples in schools where a student doesn't use a preferred pronoun and he gets suspended or expelled. So lots of different issues that I have here.
Is there a question you'd like to focus to somebody? We've got Max has a hand up from Safe Schools for Alex. We've got our staff.
I'm just expressing my concerns. I don't think I could vote for this because of those reasons. Too many states are adopting these same things and having the same results, where the data, schools are disincentivized from reporting what's actually happening because they are scrutinized. Their data is scrutinized, and the last thing they want to do is look bad to the public.
Okay, so not a question. Let's move through our other comments and then see if we have a question that we might want to refer back to our guests. Member Bogus.
Hey, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. So I do have I think 3 questions. And the first one would be, what FERPA exception exactly is being used to justify and disclose this data?
Is that a question for Aaron or for Chantel? Who would like to feel?
I would speculate Director Chalice, but I don't know if the others could answer it or not.
So for me, I'll answer.
Thanks.
I think, yeah, I'm off mute. Okay. So the answer is we would not display any data that would be violation FERPA. So you wouldn't need a FERPA exception because you'd be at aggregate levels, and then you would also be applying disclosure avoidance, so you can't get down to certain levels. So if you're dealing with small n sizes, we would blur them or outright hide what those small numbers are. So it wouldn't require a FERPA exception. And that's what we'd have to look into to make sure that there is no violation or no way to re-identify any individual or group of individuals within that. When I say group, I mean a small group where you can actually say, I can, it's one of 3 individuals or something like that. So that's how we would approach it. It's all in aggregate.
So to clarify, Aaron, I think, and then back to you, Member Bogus, no names at all, and where the n size is small enough that there might be some possibility of identifying, that's where you would blur even the numbers and types. Am I getting that correct?
That's correct. We've looked at
Okay.
a couple other possible approaches. We haven't explored all those, but basically it is make sure that no identifiable information is being displayed anywhere.
Got it. Okay, back to you, Member Bogus. Did you have a couple more?
Well, I actually have a follow-up because I don't really understand the answer because any disclosure under FERPA requires an exception. And the information in board backup says that we're disclosing this under a FERPA exception.
Where's
So-
the Member Bogus? Could you point to that?
You're not disclosing PII.
Okay, the answer is we're not disclosing PII.
Hold on there, Aaron, just 1 second. Member Bogus, is there a spot in the backup that talks about a FERPA exception?
Yeah, I have the Department of Justice up with me, but it's in here somewhere. I just remember writing that down. And it was
Okay.
talked about earlier. I can find it and come up with it for you.
Well, let's go to Aaron. I think Aaron wanted to respond.
So just responding back to that, FERPA exceptions are required when the information being shared out is identifiable. So any record that we share out with any company, contractor, researcher, what have you, if there's identifiable information, then it has to go to the language where here is the exception that is used. And that's where privacy goes in and says, okay, this is the exception. But if it's a data set that's aggregated, meaning you can't take that information and actually identify an individual, then the FERPA rules, if you will, are not needed, because when I say not needed, you have the disclosure avoidance, so you don't need to put in that additional security or that additional component in there where privacy has to be protected. Hopefully that makes sense.
Let me just move us quickly here. I think I see the language she's talking about. The bottom of the second page of the draft letter says any data sharing would need to be permissible under the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act FERPA exemption provision. So that may be causing some confusion because it says exemption. I think what you're saying is you don't even need to get to exemption because you're not disclosing identifiable data.
That can be taken out.
Is that correct?
Correct. And Patty just said that could be taken out.
All right.
So Chair, may I follow up
That's
one more time?
Quick follow-up. I do want to move through, but if you have a follow-up, go ahead.
I'm really not
separate
trying to be a
question.
pest, but as my training in FERPA in my master's degree indicated that it doesn't matter whether it's PII or not. That there needs to be an exemption to share the data. And I actually just pulled that up here and am looking right at it from one of my classes. And so I'm looking right at it, and it says there has to be one for data to be shared regardless of whether or not it's personally identifiable. So I'm a little confused.
Let's put that. I see Michelle stepping in. Thank you, AAG Buse.
Yes, Michelle Buse, Assistant Attorney General. I'm not sure what document you're reading from, but under the federal law, it protects personally identifiable information. It does not protect aggregated or disaggregated information when you can't identify the student. So I'm not sure what document you're reading from, respectfully, ma'am, but FERPA does say personally identifiable information.
Okay, let's move to Vice Chair Earl and Member Davis, and then if we have time, we can circle back if board members have more questions. Am I in the
Okay.
right order there, Vice Chair Earl?
Yeah, that's
Is it-
right. And I just, this question has to go along with Board Member Woods. And I guess in a broader sense, I'm asking kind of the same questions. I am a little concerned, just the dashboard in general, meaning that we have to have accurate data in order to make accurate decisions. And if districts are feeling pressure, that this is going to reflect poorly on them, we found that sometimes that excessive pressure actually leads to the inaccuracies in data because they feel like they can't report data because it's going to be reflective in a way that may not be true. And I just can speak to, on a personal experience, you can have a horrific death toll that escalates, right, in a particular community, but it's not reflective of the community. And that's on a broader sense. So I am asking myself, when we get this data, then what? And I think that's what Leanne was asking too. What then? And often this data is after the fact, and I know we can see trends, and I think that's maybe where this information is going, as we're looking at long-term trends, but I worry a little bit about the message it's sending. And that's why Leanne was asking the question. I guess I would ask that same question. Do we know that this actually creates safer schools? And what research do we have with that? I don't know if there's anyone that can actually address that, so.
Yeah.
Who would like to handle that? Do we have somebody from staff here?
So my very first question that I asked the group once we started looking at this is, has anyone looked at correlation between displaying the data and the outcomes? Are there studies that we can start looking at? And just sharing with you is, at this point, there are not any that I have found that are credible, nor talking with the Center for Safety in Utah, they have access saying this actually reduces, or the studies behind it is very early into the stage of displaying this information and seeing the outcomes. So there are no studies that I am aware of. And I have asked the question multiple times saying, can we start looking at things, just part of, that initial, literacy review of what are we going to find behind what's academic is looked at and found. And we haven't seen any reports that actually correlate the two, where you're displaying the information and can see an actual drop in safe school violations or things like that. So just sharing is, we've already been looking, and we're still looking to see if there's been research done on it, but it is a very early stage.
Okay.
And it would seem to me, sorry, I just follow up real quick. It would seem to me that someone needs to be engaged in that research. Otherwise, we're spending a lot of money on things, and we're hoping, and it's not, I think the good intentions are there, but it's really got to actually, is it doing what we want it to do? I had one other comment real quick, but I'm not remembering it. So if I remember, I'll come back.
Max had his hand up, and then we can come back to Vice Chair Earl. Max, did you want to weigh in on one of these questions?
Yes. So I think it's Commissioner Klein that was talking about, the Wye Meadow Died book. And she is correct that prior to the Parkland school shooting, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas was completely underreporting prior to the tragedy. They reported not just for 1 year, but for 3 consecutive years. And Marjorie Stoneman Douglas is a massive school with over 3,000 kids, 0 bullying, 0 threats, 0 assault, 0 intimidation. So they were already underreporting, and I'm sure that there's already underreporting in Utah, and you already make this data public. So it didn't work for us before. And there's no one panacea, but I will tell you that what this does, and this is what Florida did, was not only have we had an intense focus on making sure that the data is accurate. One way to do that is to have auditors. We have auditors that are going around the state. We have put measures in place, accountability. So if we find that school districts are underreporting, the Commissioner of Education has the authority to withhold the superintendent's salary. And what it does is it changes the culture. That's what we all are trying to get at. How do you change the culture so that the priority of the administration in this school district is school safety, first and foremost. So, and this is how you do that, is an attention to this issue. We don't care if numbers are high. We just want them to be accurate. And so also how you create accuracy is training. There wasn't enough training going around the state. And so districts were doing it not uniformly. And so an attention to this issue, that's why I supported the school safety bill that mandated that there be a parent portal. There are in states that haven't had a tragedy, there's already underreporting and they're not taking it seriously. And that's what this does. It elevates this issue. It puts this on the radar so that school districts know that this is important and they have to take it seriously.
Thank you. Okay, I want to go to Davis and Hart and then back to Bogus and Klein, but Chantel, did you want to weigh in here first?
Yes, thank you so much.
Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to add along with that information that this is just meeting the requirements for House Bill 84. So in any direction that we take from you as board members, we're happy to follow, of course. Just also recognizing that House Bill 84 requires that we publish this data. So whether we go forward with this grant or not, then we as staff will have to come up with another way to publish the same data and get this out here using that comparison tool that's written into House Bill 84. So I just wanted to bring us together around that common theme as well.
Thank you. And good point. We are asking a question of how, not so much whether at this point. The legislation kind of addresses the weather. Member Davis and then Vice Chair Hart.
Yes, I just, we as a protocol need to address our comments to the chair. But if I can just break from that for one little moment, Max, I want to thank you for coming today. And it feels a little strange talking about all of these logistics after your intro and explaining the significant loss that you have suffered. And I want you to know that that we see you and that we are so sorry and that we take safety seriously and hope things improve all the way across the board. I would I have similar questions as those that have been expressed by members Wood and Earl and Bogus and Klein. I worry that if the important question is to ask not only, is that will there be efficacy in this tool to help students to increase safety, but can we guarantee it will do no harm? And I worry about that as well. And I'm wondering, are there requirements in the Florida law that which schools are required to report? Because Florida pretty fully funds district schools and charter schools and private schools. Are all three of those required to participate in the reporting? And then the second question is, how do you audit effectively when you can't personally identify information?
Could I steer that through staff or directly to Max? Let's ask our team first, and would be interested in hearing from
I can answer that second question, is how do you audit or how do you check the data? We've actually been working on this for the past 8 years as we've looked at incident data reporting with all the LEAs. Just so you're aware, 3 times a year, your staff does a courtesy review with every LEA, and we look at all data elements. So there's a lot of data elements that are submitted, but if this is one of them where we do a check, what is the LEA submitting in the October, December, the end of the year data submission, and we get to them before their final submission is due to say, this is what we're seeing, and we do just a statistical comparison against what have you shown in the past, what are you showing this year, and we also base it upon the size of the LEA. You know, if it's a district like Alpine and they're showing very small counts percentage wise, we'll alert them saying, make sure you're double checking these numbers. And so it's been a process over the past 8 years to continue to improve the data quality that's coming in. It's a collaboration between both staff here and staff in the LEAs to review all the information and do multiple trainings on it. Is it perfect? Of course not, but that's the process we're going through right now. So there is an audit check behind the scenes with staff who can actually go down and see, you know, individual counts and how they're connected, and then confirmation back with the LEAs. Are these counts that we're showing correct, or do they need to be updated at these data collection times? So that's how we do the correction or the data quality process.
Member Davis, did that answer the question? Was there another part that we want to refer to Aaron or to Max?
Yeah, I had another, I mean, first of all, looking at this, I don't know how helpful it's going to be when most of our reports are other. But I guess the question is, which entities that receive all or some state funding are required to report? Districts, charters, and or private schools? Which of those are in Florida are doing that now?
All of the public and charter schools are required to report incidents of violence, drugs, and discipline to the State Department of Education. The only category that is not are the private schools.
Could I piggyback briefly just as a follow-up? You know, Member Davis points out the other. Is this grant intended to help make that more accurate? I had the same concern as we first talked about this. You know, that doesn't tell you much. I'm hearing that the idea is to make that more accurate. How would that happen if that hasn't already been addressed? How would this grant help to provide more clarity than having the top line read out?
I can answer that, Chair Moss, if you'd like.
Sure.
So I can speak to that. So one of the things that staff has been doing currently, and we've been engaged in work for the past year and a half, is looking at each of these infraction types and helping to work with the LEAs on what do these different ones mean. And the biggest piece of feedback that we're receiving at the School Safety Center is the reason the other is so high is because we have some work to do on helping our LEAs to better understand what are each of these infraction types. So what is the definition for the infraction type? And also, how do we report across the state when there are more than one infractions that happen simultaneously? So those of you that have been in schools know that that's quite frequent. So it could be a fight, but the fight was over vaping, and also there was some bullying going on. And so a consequence of that is that a lot of our LEAs are putting in as other and then keeping other records at the school so that they can address it appropriately. At the state level, we're getting other, again, because of that lack of clarity. And so one of the biggest pieces of feedback I'm getting from LEAs is that they want training. They want to know how to be consistent. They want to look at their peers across the state and see, oh, hey, you're struggling with tobacco, for example. So am I. What can we do? How can we come together around resources and using this as a data point? But if we're not speaking the same language and we don't have consistency on those definitions and what those things mean, the concern is that we will continue to see other as the top infraction type. And so just to answer your question, yes, we are working on that now behind the scenes. And one thing that we want to do is bring our LEAs together. And the starting point for that is just a consistent data point that then would speak to, okay, so what next? So here's the what now. This is what's being reported. What are the next resources needing, including some of those that I mentioned, consistent language, consistent definitions, and ways to categorize these infractions in a way that's meaningful across the state, which is what you as board members would have input in on a dashboard. Again, whether we go with this grant or it's something created through staff, you would have that input moving forward.
Okay, let's move to Member Hart, Vice Chair Hart. Unless Chantel, okay, you got two screens. Vice Chair Hart.
Can I just follow up really quickly?
All right, sure. Member Davis.
Just quickly, I just want to thank both of them for that information. It's helpful, and to say if I vote for this today, it's because I'm not sure that this is going to help. In fact, I fear it might hurt. That is my internal worry, but we have to do this, it sounds like, legally. So our options are either to move forward and do this or to seek a change in legislation next year. And I'm not sure what the right way is to go. And so I just want to explain that before I vote, that I want safety to increase, and if I felt like this would help, I'd be excited. I'm just not positive yet. I hope it does. I hope it does.
Thank you. Let's go to Vice Chair Hart. We're coming close to the top of the hour. We'll go back to Member Bogus and Member Klein for a quick follow-up. And I see Member Green. Member Hart, Vice Chair Hart.
So first, just a point. Our student information systems would have to be able to collect data at this level of specificity. And that may be why you're seeing the others and districts and schools using other tools to parse out that other, because perhaps the student information system doesn't make that easy or accurate in some ways. So I think we have some other work to do here, and be able to do what the law specifies. Secondly, what date does this provision in, I think I know the answer, but I want to be sure. What date do we have to have this? Did this go into effect? Can anyone answer that?
My staff, can I defer that to you guys?
The law went into effect in May.
So we were supposed to have a dashboard by May?
Well, the law went into effect in May. It doesn't give us a specific date where it has to be up and running, but we need to come in compliance with the law.
I see. So it is a matter of law that we have this, even though as misguided as it may be, because we don't have information on whether or not it's successful. We may or may not, our individual schools may or may not have the capacity to do what this law requires. And we have to create a comparative dashboard, all by an unknown date, but the law already went into effect. If we do not if we do not enter into this agreement, what is our staff's plan to come in compliance with the law prior to any sort of work with the legislature on making the requirements different? What is our staff's plan if we don't do this?
Chantel, can I refer that one to you? Or any designee in your room there?
Yes, thank you so much. I'll speak to the first part of it, and then I'll let Aaron speak, because a lot of the heavy lifting is going to come from Aaron's team as well as the School Safety Center. So I'll speak of it through the School Safety Center lens. So going back to the data points that we have, and again, just appreciate all of you, and I can feel the sense of wanting us all to come around the topic of safety, regardless of what the perspectives may be. From our perspective at the School Safety Center, working, of course, with USBE staff and then liaisons and other agencies, we want to be able to look at the data and help create resources and a better understanding on what schools need to be safe, so that we're, directing our conversations and providing you all as our board members with the right information that you need to help get the legislation right, and to get the funding right, and to get the resources right. And so what we need is an opportunity to look at data that is accurate and to help support schools with that piece moving forward. So where this is legislatively mandated, we'll have to come up with some way to, look at that comparison chart. And I'll let Aaron speak to that a little bit more, because the technical side is a concern, but also from the content side, looking at it from our perspective. Right now, we're going off of that same information that you are looking at other as the top category. And so to be able to look at data across the state in a different way certainly could inform those conversations on, I think, what a lot of you have been asking. So what do we do with this data? How do we ensure that we're not causing harm? How do we ensure that we're supporting schools and making sure that we're educating the public as well on what data points actually look like? I think Max mentioned earlier that higher incidents don't necessarily mean a problematic school. It could just mean that different resources are needed for that area. And so being able to have those conversations. So without having the additional funding to be able to make the dashboard look the way that we want, so that it does support schools in the way that Utah would like to see schools supported, we could potentially run into some challenges, because we just don't have the funding to move things around the way that I think would be beneficial for us to better inform you as board members. But I'd like Aaron to speak to in terms of his staffing because of his needs.
Thank you. So just sharing with the board. So we've had these conversations. I've had these with Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones saying, okay, as we look at this, what are scenarios as we move forward? There is the basic level of work that we could incorporate into our current school comparison dashboard that would take upwards to about an additional month. So we try to figure out how to put that in there. When I say additional month, in addition to all the work that we're doing right now. So we already have our 12-year calendar. We'd have to figure out how do we add a 13th month and squeeze it in there and get it in there. So that's the first solution. How do we approach this? Second option obviously is why this is being presented is here's an opportunity, an option here where our staff would not be responsible for the actual dashboard and putting the best design and practices up forth. And so that's why we've reached out and we said, hey, this is an option. Let's look at this. Third option is, okay, how do we find some funding? Where can we find some funding at to actually hire in individuals internally to build this out? So it's kind of that process of, or, you know, that level of the quality that you would get out of it. And the time behind it. Obviously, it's the resources. So that's the kind of the question that we're faced with is it's a mandate from the legislation. We've got to come in compliance with it. To what level and the quality of that level is based upon, you know, where we can pull the resources and apply it.
Thank you. Vice Chair Hart, did I answer the question?
Basically, we don't have the money or the resources to do it internally is what I got out of that. So thank you.
And at least as I understand, this would sort of put us on our own doing this rather than in connection with some of the other schools that are working with Safe Schools for Alex. Is that a piece that would not be available? My understanding, and I'm sorry, I'm just piggybacking, that part of this could go to a comparative tool that would bring us in communication with other states. Anyone? Chantel or Aaron, did I get that right?
I can speak to that, Chair Moss. So the goal of this currently is not to compare with other states. Certainly in the future, you know, beyond this grant, if that's something that you all as board members would like to discuss and move forward, certainly, you know, we could look at that once we have a foundational piece. But right now, the comparison tool is to compare districts and schools within districts. And that's what's written into House Bill 84. That comparison tool is specific to our state.
Okay, so that would be down the road if there was a choice. Okay, Member Green hasn't spoken yet, and then let's go to Member Bogus and Member Klein.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to reference the document and back up the Department of Justice grant questions. That's where I'll be getting my coming from with the question. As I was reviewing this, I'm on 6. And then the parenthesis 1. And it talks about the anonymous reporting systems. I was wondering how Safe Utah translates into this conversation, because it would seem that maybe these two are kind of the same approach. So, and if that's the case, it says here that it can complement an ARS system that we currently have. And I'm just wondering, would this complement it or in essence kind of duplicate what we have with Safe Utah? And I have another question after. So anybody that might know that?
We put that one out there, Chantel or member of staff who'd like to address that one and the interaction between that and Safe UT app.
Answer that one.
Okay. Yes, I can speak to that. And then I think Max probably has some additional information that would be helpful. So this was a piece that was spoken to during the task force. So as you recall, the task force was convened with speaking to different areas in House Bill 61. The task force will continue to move forward with House Bill 84. And this is one of those pieces that was talked about in terms of the anonymous reporting systems and the different systems that could be used. So one of the things that you'll see in House Bill 84 is that we have a couple of different portals. We have the public safety portal and then the parent portal. And so this kind of speaks to making sure that there are MOUs in place and, you know, the relevant partners, including law enforcement, have access to information that is necessary to help avert threats and things of that nature, but is not specific to, you know, de-identifying any student data privacy or information in that matter. But I think Max could speak to that a little bit more as well.
Okay, and I think we're specifically looking at overlap, right? Duplication with Safe UT app, which may be, you know, present elsewhere. Max, did you have input on that?
Yeah, Chair Moss, this paragraph right here is referencing in the Bureau of Justice Assistance application about where this grant would fall in. So this application for this grant, we would qualify in section 1, which says in the BJA document. That's how this this qualifies, because this paragraph is from the BJA document, and it lists several different sections, and we would our grant would fall into section 1, which says that if you're developing and operating technology solutions, and that's what this dashboard and this portal is. It's a technology solution. So this paragraph is specifically from the BJA application, and we would fall in section 1.
Okay.
So, and as far as Safe UT is collecting tips, anonymous tips from kids that are know of friends that might be thinking about hurting themselves or others. They're not receiving information from school districts like USBE is. USBE is the holder of all of that information. And so we would be working with USBE to comply with the law to create this parent portal. If I might just reiterate that USBE is already collecting this data. So the only thing that we would be doing is putting it in a format so that school districts can access it. They know what's happening in their school. You would have a better way to look at this data, know what's happening inside your school. And as we talked about earlier, shoving everything under the rug and showing zeros does not make your school safer. And I believe that the dashboards that we have created are extremely useful and are making schools safer and are good for parents want to know this information as well, so they can be actively involved in the process.
Is it accurate to say Safe UT is more rapid action, and the dashboard would be more kind of after action, where you're summarizing what's happened?
Oh, 100%. Now, Florida, what we did is to try to fix that was we increased the frequencies that schools have to report. We were, only reporting every year a while ago, but then we realized that data was basically stale and old by the time you're looking at it. So we actually require schools to report monthly, and the Florida dashboard is now going to be reporting 3 times a year. So schools are able to look at this data to see if your bullying numbers are trending up, or if the numbers of weapons that are coming in your school are trending in the wrong way. You're able to address it, quickly.
Got it. Okay. I guess as I understood Member Green's question, I want to go back to her. Is there duplication? My understanding, at least, is Safe UT, you have specific anonymous information that is meant for rapid response to try to prevent harm. Whereas this, whether it's monthly or yearly, is meant to say, what are the trends? What are the problems, right? So you're looking at aggregate, where Safe UT is anonymous but specific and quick. Member Green, I should put that back to you. I'm trying to make sure I understand, because it's a good question.
No, I appreciate that. And if I may, Chair Moss, ask a follow-up question there then. So Safe UT, students can submit complaints, and so those are red statements. With this, do those reports come from parent complaints, and those written conforms or complaints are recorded within the data system? Do they come from students that's recorded and kept in this data system? Or are they, it's almost like an affidavit, right? Or a testimonial? Because we have been working on a place that parents can bring concerns and complaints, and it will land somewhere. And I've been saying for a while, you know, parents come to give their 2-minute, you know, comment, and if it's a concern, it kind of floats out into the air and it never lands anywhere. Or students can go within the school system and have concerns that they bring, and then that concern or complaint doesn't land somewhere sometimes, and then we can see that events happen. And so if those were never recorded, then we don't have any proof of that there was a problem that actually existed before something tipped into something, you know, big enough that now we're paying attention. So if I may ask, are you trying to bring all of those parts together so that we can see what the environment of schools is? Do we read the testimonials, and what do those percentages look like, and how much of what is going on is accessible to the public? We can start with that. I have a billion questions.
All right, well, let's get that one and then cycle through and come back.
I don't know if it's like written statements or if it's just statistics. And I have a big question here is, what do you mean by data? So, and I'll just leave it there.
Chantel, I see a hand up.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that, if that's okay, Chair Moss. So thank you. That's an excellent question, and I really appreciate all of the thoughtful questions around the data, because there are so many data sources and some of them speak to unique things. So just to add a few points of clarification. So Safe UT data includes tips and chats that students, parents, community members can input into the app, and that goes to Safe UT. So that does not come to USBE. All of that data goes to the Huntsman Center where Safe UT is stored. Now, principals and superintendents have access to reports that they can pull daily if they want to on any of the tips and chats that come in. And then Safe UT produces several reports, monthly, quarterly, and annual reports on those tips. So we partner with Safe UT, but we don't directly receive any of that data information. The data information that we receive at USBE are those infraction types. So those are things that happen at the school. So for example, a fight or vaping or tobacco or drugs. And those are things that in a typical setting, what would happen is the incident would occur, and then the principal or assistant principal or dean of students, perhaps one of those titles, would be informed, would investigate the issue, and then enter that into the system. And then that we can see that that has been entered. Alongside with that, their best practice is that they would be talking to parents, they would be coming up with any plans that the student might need to be successful, and also looking at trends and patterns in their own data with, particular incidents that are happening over time, so that they can then again look for those resources. But that's the data that comes to us directly at USBE. So what happens is the schools will input that into their data system, provided that they're using the data system that speaks to ours, because there are several other tools that we've talked about. So that would come into their system, and then it would be reported to our data and statistics team. And that's where we generate that annual report, that the screenshot that was shared earlier, which is the student discipline and law enforcement action report. That's where we get all of that data. So we run that annually to share with all of you as well as publicly. So when you're saying data, that's thank you so much. That's the public view. And these are currently the infraction types that we currently track. Just a point of clarification, because of new legislation, there will be hazing and cyberbullying added to these. So you'll see 2 more that will come in next year due to legislation. But that's the data that we see and we can look at USBE, and also that LEAs have access to. And then in terms of any type of anecdotal data or conversations that are happening, that's all data that's kept at the local level. So that would be data that, say, the principal and superintendent would have access to. As I mentioned, some schools use other tools or resources to capture some of that anecdotal data, so that they can file that into either cumulative files at the school or other places for their multidisciplinary teams to review. Did that answer your question, or at least partially?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and you might, let's cycle through here. I think we have I'm gonna go with member Bogus, member Klein, then back to member Wood and member Davis. Sybil, does that sound about right?
Yes.
All right, member Bogus.
Thank you, sir. So I just want to make it clear that I understand that we're required to comply with this law, but I also understand that we're required to comply with FERPA. And we're talking about two different actions here. I understand that we already collect this data, but now we are disclosing this data. And the latter requires an exception. So under FERPA, we can disclose data either with parental permission or through an exception. So I'm going to ask again, what evidence in FERPA 20 USC 1232G and the regulations CFR 34 say that the USBE can share data that is not personally identifiable under FERPA?
So we've got, and I don't want to duplicate, but we do have AAG views here. I guess I will ask one clarifying question. My understanding is this data is actually being shared and not yet interactive. So on that part, the data is being collected, it is being shared.
With whom is it being shared, sir, may I ask?
Let's ask quickly on that point, because I thought that was, did you want to address the AAG views, or is that more for?
Can I first answer the question about what I will
Sure.
read to you directly from FERPA's regulations, and I think the confusion is in the definition of disclosure. And this is directly out of FERPA, and it says disclosure means to permit access to or the release, transfer, or other communication of personally identifiable information contained in education records by any means. So if you said we can't disclose information without having an exception, you need to look at what the definition of disclosure is. The definition in FERPA, and I read that directly from the regulations, means personally identifiable information.
All right,
And none of this is personally identifiable.
I'm sorry, okay. And so I think we've had clarity that we're not disclosing any personally identifiable information, correct?
Correct.
And that whatever we're doing is already being disclosed, and it would now be in an interactive form.
Okay, so then I
Back to
have,
the second question. Well, member Bogus, we had the other question, I think, about, was there another question? There was the question about where it's being shared. I see Deputy Norman sliding in. Did you want to address the other part of that question?
I don't recall another part of that question, but maybe I did ask one, sir.
I can
Well,
speak to
I'll
where the
defer to-
information is being shared. It's being
Yeah,
shared
I
in
think that
that
was
law
fine.
enforcement or who discipline and law enforcement action report that's published annually. And that's the page that you see in front of you comes from that report.
Published where, Chantel?
And that is a public facing report.
Where
It's
is
on our
that
website
published?
currently.
On the website, okay. So I want, that's where I got that, member Bogus, is that there was a statement that it's now being disclosed. I think it's already being disclosed is what I'm hearing. So was there a follow-up there, member Bogus? I do want to cycle through.
Yeah, I have a couple concerns specifically with the Sixth Amendment. I think we've got some Sixth Amendment issues here. And I've discussed those with some other board members. And then I'm very deeply concerned because I've been witness to the mobilization of data in my time as a member of school safety committees and in my professional capacity, where school safety initiatives have been enacted. And instead of being honest and truthful with the data, we then mobilize the data, or we redefine things within our system. What are we going to put public facing and what are we going to keep internal? And I too share, because of those experiences that were firsthand, they were not relayed to me. I do have really deep concerns that this is going to push our problems underground as opposed to addressing them in the light. And I think that we need to address things in the light. And so that those would be my concerns. I don't have the clarity of mind, and just for the public record, I don't like it when other board members try to paint people who are of the dissenting opinion as not caring about school safety. I was a party in the building in 2011 when a shooter entered that building and took life. I was there. So I don't take this lightly. I do take it very, very seriously. And until some of these things are addressed, I cannot support this motion, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do think we're losing some folks. We've lost member Lear, member Booth. So let's cycle through quickly and try to tee this up for at 11:30. So I think the next hands up were member Klein, and then back to Wood and Davis. I got that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so comment, I'm thinking about the bill that passed that we are trying to now enact. And its attempts to address these school safety issues and requiring this reporting of discipline or infractions. But I would submit that there is little discipline to report when we are using restorative justice leniency policies such as MTSS, PBIS, RTI, LRBI. All of these are policies that were used in the Florida case that allowed these very real discipline issues to be kicked down the road and to not be nipped in the bud, but to be where they tried all of these other nice ways of dealing with the problems that didn't actually nip it in the bud and allowed it to escalate and embolden the individual who was, I believe, actually, it was the things he was doing were a cry for help. And because of these policies and needing, kids will do things for attention. And if they're not getting, they're going to get attention one way or the other. And he needed help. He wasn't getting the proper help that he needed. And so he continued to escalate until he finally shot up the school because of these policies that are well-meaning but ineffective. So again, where we go back to the examples I gave before, where the student was literally choked out by another student. This student that did this thing was sent to the office. He received no discipline. He was sent back to the class. Whereas other kids who, they've been expelled for not using proper pronouns under the supposed infraction of bullying or sex-based harassment. And so we have if we want to talk about disparities, this is a huge one. And the egregious behaviors kids are getting away with, whereas the social justice behaviors, they're not getting away with. They're being condemned for doing things that because they don't want to go against their conscience. So, if we want to fix this problem, and we're going to talk to the bill sponsor about fixing these problems, then these restorative justice leniency policies, not discipline policies, but leniency policies that are couched as discipline need to be addressed, I would say prohibited, and we need to actually install actual disciplinary policies and laws that nip these behaviors in the bud that are creating the dangers in our schools.
Thank you. Let's try to get done so we don't lose more board members, member Wood and member Davis, and we're looking for a vote before 11:30. So got about 3 minutes here.
Just some clarifying, I appreciate Chantel seemed to answer most of my question, but she talked about the fact that we're currently collecting individual stool data for those that are in the system. But at this point, we only show information. We don't even show information by LEA. So is there additional work that will have to be done in terms of collection, additional cost to LEAs or to schools in terms of collection? Or is that just coming, but we're just aggregating it all and putting it in as an overall state percentage?
Yes, happy to answer that question if that's okay, Chair Moss.
Sure.
Yes, so there will not be an additional cost to LEAs. They currently gather this information and send it to us through our aligned systems. And so there won't be an additional cost to LEAs. In terms of, for us, we capture all this. I think Aaron spoke to earlier an Excel spreadsheet, if you will. And so we have all of the data. And then of course, this report is public facing. So the data is accurate. But of course we try to make it a little more digestible for public. And when looking at this new legislation, which is from House Bill 84, where we are required to have a comparative tool, certainly that'll look a little different as well. Whether we go forward with the dashboard or we put this in a report, the report will look very different next year because of this new legislation. And so we have the data. Just to answer your question, Board Member Wood, we do have the data. We have access to the data. It would just be a matter of how you all as board members would want to put that out there in accordance with the new legislation.
All right, thank you. Member Davis, Member Bogus, got 1 and 2 minutes, 1.5 minutes.
We recently passed a comparative data tool, maybe not data, but an opportunity where we're going to link the school's website into our comparative data tool that we already have on our website. What would preclude us from, in effect, doing the same thing and taking each LEA's data and putting what they give us already in our comparative data tool that we already have, rather than moving on a whole big, entirely different dashboard in code? Was it required of us to create anything beyond a comparative data dashboard with lots of bells and whistles? Or can we put the data in the pretty user-friendly system that we have right now and just add a column to what we have with these incidents, a link so they can click on these incidents per LEA?
Chantel or
I can speak to that. We have Aaron that's sitting right here, and it is just additional time, resources, FTE that we don't have. So it would just be reprioritizing or putting aside existing projects to be able to accomplish this one. So it's just the time, money, people question.
A quick follow-up, just a quick follow-up. I'm just saying, it sounds like board members have enough conflict that if they seek a legislative change and there is a change that comes, it would be easier to change up what we are doing in-house than a big new $2 million dashboard that we've encumbered money from Florida University. So I'm not sure which way to go on this that will help still meet the demands of the law, because we do need a plan today, and our legislature needs to see that we're acting on the law, even if we don't understand the efficacy fully of the tool.
All right, we're losing members. We're over, but let's go super quick speed round, 30-second. Member Bogus, Member Hart, Vice Chair Earl.
Thank you, sir. And I'm beating a dead horse here, but I'm confused as to why we're mentioning FERPA at all. I don't understand that.
We got to focus on new questions if we could. Is this a question on whether
Well, it is a question, because I don't understand why we're mentioning it if it's not something that's necessary, and how this is different from the other data privacy agreements that require an exception under FERPA.
And I think we did discuss this. My suggestion, not so much emotion, but there's a reference to exemption in the document that Member Bogus is referring to. And that does seem inconsistent with the analysis we've seen from AAG Buse. So I think if we're not talking about an exemption, that's probably what we need to say rather than what we currently say. Deputy Norman?
Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you. So that line in there can be taken out. It was actually put in there just to be able to say, just for the opposite reason, Board Member Bogus, that you're talking about, which is nothing can happen unless there were an exemption. So that's why it was put in there, but we can take that line out if that line makes it confusing.
I think if the analysis is we are not using personally identifiable data and therefore do not fall within FERPA and therefore do not need an exemption, we should either say that or just take it out. A member, Vice Chair Hart.
As far as I'm concerned, this is the law. We need to implement it. We have a resource. We have plenty of assurances that we can manage what goes on, what goes off. We don't get the choice of whether or not to follow the law. That's our responsibility. I don't get we don't have the time, the money, the resources to do this on our own. We've got people offering to do it that have the resources. If we don't like it later on, that's a whole nother issue. But right now we are facing down a law that we are to implement, and that's our job.
Thank you. And I do appreciate in my own discussions prior to the meeting, changes to that letter to make very clear that if we do go forward, we have the right to adjust according to local needs or law. Vice Chair Earl?
Yeah, I just want to make clear, we will be able to decide what goes on to this dashboard, or is that all those pieces already, right? Do we get to weigh in on that, or is that already decided?
Yes, this comes from Utah law with any additions or revisions that we make, is my understanding. Chantel or Patty, you want to address that? I understand.
Yes, I can speak to that. So right now,
if
if you look at House Bill 84 and some of the others, the school safety level data, and it's in line 1534 in House Bill 84, says that the comparison tool must link to school level safety data, including data points described in section 53E-3-516. And that is, Vice Chair Earl, what you're looking at here. That's that data. It's the data that goes into the school discipline and law enforcement action report. It's the 21 incidents that we currently collect. And then again, to clarify, there will be 2 more, which include the cyberbullying and hazing as per other legislation. But that is specifically spelled out in House Bill 84 in line 1534 under section 53E-3-516.
Thank you. Does that answer it, Vice Chair Earl?
Okay, no, that actually made it confusing for me. So
I'm
you're
sorry.
saying that the hazing and the what are already required?
Those are new, as I understand it.
Those are new. We already we know what the data points are, or do we get to have a say in what those data points are? Sorry.
My crack at it is the law, it only draws from the law, and the law has recently changed to include cyberbullying and hazing, and so that goes
Whatever
into
we
the
include.
law, and then whatever USBE or current or changes to state law add, but it's entirely within our control, either with existing law or changes to law or changes to local policy as determined by us. Is that all correct, Chantel?
That is correct. Yes, thank you for clarifying.
Got it. Okay. Back to you, Vice Chair Earl.
Okay. Yep, no.
We've been spending some time on that one because I think that was a big concern. I had personally some concerns about the language of the letter that, in my view, didn't clarify that, and I appreciate that the addition there. But Member Davis.
Can we quickly hear from whichever board members attended the Parkland visit and ask them their opinion on this? I think it might help us. Right now I've heard only people say we need to vote for this to comply with the legislature because the legislature wants it, not because we believe it will impact or not have unintentional consequences in the area of safety. But it might be helpful if we can hear from people who made the actual visit and if they learned some things that we aren't privy to as well.
Let's put that out. I'll just briefly note, my own experience, there's some value in having transparency so that parents and policymakers can weigh in. But the fact that we're already required to do it certainly weighs in for me as well. But I would love to hear. I don't know who those members are. Do we have members here who can identify themselves that were on that trip?
I can speak to that, Chair Moss. We did invite several folks, and those that could make it ended up being myself, Dr. Norman, Rhett Larson, and then we had the legislators that Max had referenced before. So I'm happy to speak to that if that's helpful. My experience, and I know Dr. Norman had some. So
I just wondered if we had any board
meet with
members.
Max and his team and look at resources from the state, as well as to actually walk through the building where this horrific tragedy occurred. And I don't think anything can really prepare you for seeing the devastation of a school building. I'm a former teacher, principal. My whole life has been education, and walking through the building and really feeling like walking through a moment in time where you can still feel the remnants of the life and the students and the teaching that was going on that day, walking through that building, and to see the dust and the bullet holes and the DNA on the wall. It just is I was filled with so much grief for the families, and then also so much hope for Utah that we have an opportunity to learn from this piece. I think that the biggest takeaway for me was being able to talk through some of those policies and lessons learned, and really revisit that while being in the building. So one piece that I'll just share with you is we were in one classroom in particular and talking about the point of entry and the way that the shooter had access to the students and where students were. And as I'm listening to this and listening to policies, the thing that caught my eye is just a single shoe that was on a desk in one of the classrooms. And those of you that, go school shopping with your nieces, nephews, children, just looking at that shoe and thinking, probably how excited that student was to put on that shoe and come to school and be there that day. And then to have this horrible tragedy, it then sparked conversation on what do we do and how do we keep our kids safe. So is there anything perfect that we learned from Florida? As Max can attest, I think they're still learning and they're still, moving forward with the information that they have. But what we did come around is that students aren't data points. Students are human. They're our most precious commodity. Our educators are our most precious commodity. And if we can use data to help inform the decisions and the resources to keep our kids safe, I think that was the takeaway that was most relevant for me. Dr. Norman, did you want to share?
Thank you. And I think I greatly appreciate that. I think it was also intended to ask if elected board members were involved. I see Member Carey's hand up. Were you part of that trip, Member Carey, or feel free to weigh in either way?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Moss. I was not able to make the Parkland visit, but Representative Wilcox did invite the parents, some elected officials, and some security officials from Florida to Utah to present their thoughts, feelings, and findings. And since that time, I've taken what I heard there, and I've worked closely with some members of our staff, these communities that care, these CTC organizations. I believe every county has one. I could be mistaken, but it's clear that, our schools gather this data. Our LEAs have this data. And again, staff can correct me, but it's my understanding that the LEAs own this data insofar as it relates to some of the surveys that we require that they take. And we have to ask their permission to get this data and present it. And so everyone that I have spoken to has been unequivocal that the data is essential. In the same breath, they are very concerned that the misuse of the data could create, they've never used the word panic, but obviously raise concern among parents if the data is cherry picked, if it's skewed. But I just wanted to weigh in on Board Member Davis when she asked the question. And yes, when I was there, everyone, both from the Florida delegation, as well as my visits to our schools and to the CTC communities, they all recognize that the data is absolutely essential. And in my experience, yes, to an extent, that data is available to parents now, but it's not in an accessible or digestible format. And I think that this was the design of the legislation. Whether it gets us there or not, I don't know. But that's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Carey. Last comment, Member Straight, and then let's move ourselves to a vote while we've still got our folks here.
I guess the question I keep coming back to is, are we better off doing this in-house, or do we need this grant with the University of Florida? And we're already working on this because the law did mandate. I think where we're getting a little bit sidetracked is the law didn't mandate that we do the University of Florida. This opportunity came to us, and I'm still trying to decide whether that's the best option. We all want to do the best option. I'm still not sure what it is. And we could come up with money, I believe, to do it in-house if that's the issue. It'd be more efficient, maybe even more effective, but maybe. So I'm kind of a little stuck right now. Thank you.
Well, let's put that back for a sum up and then we can tee it up for a vote. I mean, my understanding is we have not moved forward concretely. It only just now went into effect. So, in terms of building a dashboard, if somebody wants to kind of sum up from staff's perspective, not so much the policy decision, good or bad, but the functionality, the pragmatic, what does this look like? Doing it in-house versus supporting the grant application.
Thank you. Again, Aaron Bruff, can we do this in-house? Yes. Are there limitations? Of course. Can we contract this out? Yes. I mean, is this just kind of sharing the same, would this be done in-house? Yes, we can. It goes back to the same problem of the resources, the time, and the money to make sure that we do it in-house. Just kind of reiterating what we said last time. Is it possible? Yeah, we'd figure it out. We have to come compliance with the law one way or the other.
Do we have the money, Aaron, Director Bruff? I think one question was, do we have the money? And if not, is there a place to get it?
So I can go rob a bank and then I go to jail and then you'll have the money, but no. So there was no money allocated for this. And that's the issue is there's no money.
Where would we get? I think Member Straight's question is, if we had to do this on our own, where could we get the money?
I'll let Scott answer that one.
Hey, sir, this is Deputy Superintendent of Operations. Getting the money proves difficult at this point since we are obligated and or encumbered. And even our carry forward balances are designated to be prioritized for 3.265 million for the district administrative funding. So could we get money? Yes, but it would come at the cost of something else. We would have to put it in front of the board, and then the board would have to make a decision on where you want to take money from in order to pay for this.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, sir?
Member Straight?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. That does answer my question. That does help me move forward with my decision. Thank you.
Chair Moss, it's Carol. I'm sorry. I dropped off, came back. I feel like I was in a time warp because my question is still relevant.
Go ahead, Member Lear, if you have a quick question.
Sorry, I'm having a hard time.
Lost you? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry to not raise my hand, but my phone's not cooperating a lot.
Gotcha.
Anyway, my question was and was there and maybe if you discuss this, forgive me, give me the shortest answer possible. But has there been any option come forward other than the University of Florida option in terms of being able to find somebody to help us pay for it?
I don't think, I'll answer as quickly as I can. I don't think we conducted an active search. I think the University of Florida is partnering with the Safe Schools for Alex, and they are the entity out there looking for money and looking to support local development. But I don't think we've otherwise sought an outside funding source or partner. I see a couple nods. Is that correct?
So there's no other, sorry to repeat a little bit, but just I want to really make sure this is a thorough.
Erin, Chantel?
I can speak to that. Yes, thank you. So this is a grant opportunity. So we did not conduct an RFP or go seeking this out. And so we don't have any, competitors. This is one specific grant opportunity that we were asked if we would like to be part of because of the alignment really in shared interests.
Okay, I appreciate that. And to your knowledge, there's no other university or graduate student or any other program that is compiling the same information or doing the same research or working on the same issue. I don't expect you to do an RFP that's not required, but I'm saying to your knowledge or the knowledge of your staff, this is the only opportunity that we know of.
that correct? You're muted, Chantel.
I'm sorry, that is correct to the best of our knowledge, yes.
Okay.
That's helpful. Thank you very much for that answer.
Thank you. And actual last comment, question, member Vice Chair Earl. We're gonna
Yeah, sorry, timeframe, I'm just wondering what the timeframe is on them building this out. We've still got to get approved for the funding itself, or at least the Florida does. And then I also I just am wondering on new federal mineral lease funding is available in July unless I've missed something with finances. We could be using some of that money for this. So I'm just trying to see what the options are out there.
I can speak to the timeline. So the grant is for 3 years. So the first year really would be a lot of planning and again, getting all of board input to make sure that everything is planned properly. And then following that would be the creation of the tool. And then year 3 would be the training, implementation, and moving things forward, again, as per direction of the board. And then I'll let Scott speak to the funding piece.
Deputy Jones. We have Scott.
Yeah, for the board or to the question through the chair. So we won't know available federal mineral lease balances until September. But conceivably, yes, we could use those balances towards something like this. $2 million though is a lot of money. So if that's the cost, but that means though that if I understand correctly, that it wouldn't meet the timeline that University of Florida has to take, right? They can't wait to apply for the grant unless, for Utah, so to speak, unless they get the full support of the board. And so, I mean, technically, yes, we could wait, but I think if that's the decision that the board wants to take, it might be or to forego this process that you're talking about here. I hope that makes sense. So please let me know if it doesn't. Over.
All right, thank you. Listen, we've got a board member waiting for a root canal, so I'm going to take this to a vote. And I need some clarity from Sybil. Do we do this electronically by hitting our electronic vote, or do we need a roll call? I think we have everybody electronic, so.
We do have everybody electronic, but I would have everyone raise their hands and then I would repeat it out loud, please, so that we can repeat on record the yays and nays.
So what do you mean? Ask them to show their hand?
Yeah, go ahead and raise your hand for yes votes.
Well,
And then
we have our two, yeses and nos. We have a check and an X. Are you saying raise the hand or a yes?
Oh,
vote?
sorry. Yeah, the checks and the yeses, please.
Checks and the yeses, but then you want me to cycle through to confirm verbally? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, please, sir.
All right. So board members, the motion is the Utah State Board of Education directs staff to issue a letter supporting University of Florida and Safe Schools for Alex in applying for this grant for the benefit of Utah, and if approved by the Department of Justice, use the funding to establish the required dashboard in compliance with House Bill 84, 24 general session. Members, please vote. And then keep them up there if we can. We might have to go through and ask for confirmation. Sybil, can you let me know when you see everybody up there? I see member Lear, member Booth.
Yes, I will.
Let's see. I should have asked everybody to switch to their numbers, but I forgot. So let's see. Has everybody voted? I think we're still waiting for one or two. And remember, Booth is about to go under. Let me ask these verbally to confirm while they're up, and I'm just going to go from this top of the screen. Member Davis is a yes, correct? Yes? You're muted.
I do have
Yes.
three opposed.
Yes. So member Davis is a yes. Member Moss is a yes. Member Booth is a yes, and he's about to the knife. We have you, Randy. Thank you for sticking with us.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we got your vote. Member Carey, I see a yes, correct?
Yes, sir.
Member Earl, Vice Chair Earl, I see a yes, is that correct?
Yes.
Member Straight, I see yes, is that correct?
Yes.
Member Hart, yes, correct?
Yes.
Member Bogus, no, correct?
Yes, sir.
Member Klein, no, correct?
That is correct.
Member Wood, yes, correct?
Yes.
Member Green, no, correct?
Correct.
Member Lear, yes, correct?
Yes, correct.
Member Hymus, yes, correct?
Correct.
Member Reel, yes, correct?
Yes.
Member Norton, yes, that correct?
Yes.
Is that everybody, Sybil?
Yes.
Okay, that motion, I believe, passes by a vote of 12-3. Did I get the count right?
Correct.
With the noes being members Bogus, Klein, and Green. Okay, thank you, members, for sticking with us and those who came back to us, and appreciate your input and engagement on this issue. I believe we're set. Thank you also to our staff for your preparation, our guests for your input and involvement in this issue. With that, the motion is complete. That's our agenda. I'm looking for one last motion.
I move we adjourn.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, thank you, everybody. Have a
Thank
great
you,
Monday. Thank you for
Chair.
coming together for this.